In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do the Tunisian Simple Stitch. And I'm going to use a 7.0 millimeter Tunisian crochet hook in this tutorial today. You can see that this crochet hook is much longer than a traditional crochet hook. And if you look at the Tunisian hook, it's kind of a cross between or a combination of a crochet hook and a knitting needle. And if you look at it, you can see it has a hook on the one end, just like a crochet hook, and then on the other end you have a stopper, just like you would find on a knitting needle. So it really does look like a cross between a crochet hook and a knitting needle, but it's much longer than the traditional crochet hook, and the reason why is with knitting we have to collect our loops or cast on our loops before we can begin to work our stitches. Well, with Tunisian crochet, the similarity to knitting is where we have to collect our loops before we can work our stitches. And with a regular crochet hook, you typically work with one stitch at a time, but with the Tunisian crochet hook, we collect all of our loops first, then we work our stitches. Just like with knitting, you would cast on and collect your loops, then you would work the stitches off with a second knitting needle. But with the Tunisian crochet hook, we only use one tool to work our stitches. And I'll go ahead and show you how to do that today. I also want to mention that you can also do Tunisian crochet with a standard regular type of crochet hook. And I just wanted to mention that because before investing in a set of Tunisian crochet hooks, you may want to just try it out with a regular hook first, just to see if it's something that you do like to do and you want to continue to do Tunisian crochet. So if you do, then definitely it would be worth getting this set of Tunisian hooks. And I got this on Amazon. It was a set of 11 different sizes. It ranged from, the smallest one was a 2.0 millimeter all the way up to 8.0 millimeter. So you do get 11 sizes. And the one I'm going to use in this tutorial today is a 7.0 millimeter crochet hook. And you could basically make anything that you can with like crocheting and knitting. With the Tunisian crochet, you can make hats and gloves, scarves, afghans, and all kinds of things. Today I'm going to show you how to do the Tunisian Simple Stitch. And the Tunisian Simple Stitch is the first stitch that you should learn when you learn Tunisian crochet. Just like when you first learn to crochet, you typically would learn how to do the single crochet first and then move on to the other stitches. Of course, you would learn how to do a chain first. And with Tunisian crochet, the most basic stitch you would learn would be the Tunisian Simple Stitch. So that should be the first stitch that you learn before you move on to other stitches. And I will definitely show you some other stitches as well, but I definitely want to show you how to do the Tunisian Simple Stitch first, since that is the most basic stitch. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start off much like you would with any standard crochet project. So it's going to look very similar to a standard crochet project because we're going to go ahead and start off with a slip knot. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the slip knot on the hook. And now what we need to do is we're going to actually make some chains. So when you start off a regular crochet project, you would start off with your chains. So we're going to do the same thing. So far it seems just like regular crochet because we're going to start off with a chain. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and chain 10. Okay, so I have my 10 chains now. When you work with regular crocheting, if you wanted to have 10 single crochets, you would have to do 10 chains plus 1. With Tunisian crochet, you actually don't add a chain. If you want 10 stitches, you only need 10 chains. You don't need to add plus 1. So that's one thing that's different. So now what I'm going to do is I need to collect my loops onto my hook. Okay, and we want to start in the second chain from the hook. So we're going to skip this very first chain. we're going to begin our work in the next chain, and we're not going to insert our hook into the chain as you normally would. We are going to turn the chain, and if you turn the chain, you can see like these back bumps. They look like these little back bumps right in the middle of the back of the chain. So we're going to work into those. You may have sometimes also heard of this called the spine of the chain. So we are going to work into those back bumps. So hopefully you can see that on camera. I'm going to bring it a little closer so you can see that. So that's where we're working into those. So what we want to do is we're going to skip the very first chain. So we're not going to work into that first bump right here. We're going to work into the second one. So we're going to insert a hook underneath that back bump. Just like that. Yarn over, and then we're going to pull up a loop, and we're going to leave that loop on the hook. And if you're used to doing regular crocheting, the natural tendency right now is to yarn over and finish the stitch, but we're not going to do that. We're going to leave the loop on the hook, and then we're going to insert a hook underneath the next back bump of the chain, yarn over and pull up a loop, and we're going to leave that loop on the hook. Okay, and then we're going to insert a hook underneath the next back bump of the chain, yarn over, and we're going to pull up a loop, and we're going to leave the loop on the hook. Okay, and then we're going to find the next back bump, insert a hook underneath that, yarn over, and we're going to pull up a loop, and we're going to leave the loop on the hook. And we're going to do the same thing for each chain. We're just going to pull up a loop and leave the loops on the hook until we run out of chains. Okay, so we want to find the next back bump of the next chain. Yarn over and pull up a loop and leave the loop on the hook. Insert our hook into the next back bump of the chain. Yarn over, pull up a loop. Find the next one. Pull up a loop. Find the next back bump of the chain, yarn over and pull up a loop. And we have one more chain to work, so let me go ahead and insert my hook underneath that back bump of the last chain, yarn over and pull up a loop. And now we have finished our forward pass. So when we work from right to left, that's the forward pass, and that is where we collect our loops. That's called the forward pass. And by working into the back bumps, you can see these nice V stitches along the edge. And then the sides will have the same type of edge. We'll have the V stitches along the sides. And then when we cast off, there'll be V stitches along the top. And that's why you want to work into the back bump, so you have this nice edge on the bottom. And then that way all of the sides will look the same. Okay, so now we need to do a return pass. So we just collected all of our loops. Okay, so if you look at the bottom edge, you can see we have these nice V stitches along the bottom edge, and that's because we worked in the back bumps of the chain. And then when we're done, we'll have the V stitches along the sides, and then when we cast off, the top edge will also have V stitches. So all four sides will look the same, and it will give it a nice finished edge. Now that we finished our forward pass where we collected our loops, we need to do a return pass. We started off with 10 chains, so we should have 10 loops on our hook. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We should have the same amount of loops as the amount of chains that we started with. Okay, so now we need to do a return pass where we work from left to right to work the loops off the hook. So what we want to do now is we want to do a yarn over. We're going to pull through the first loop, just one loop to begin. And that is going to be like your chain up. When you do regular crocheting, you do your chain up on the right side. But with Tunisian crochet, the chain up is going to be on the left side when we begin the return pass. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do yarn over, and now we're going to pull through 2 loops, not just one. And then yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and yarn over, pull through 2 loops. So for the rest of this row, we're going to do a yarn over and pull through 2 loops at a time until we have just 1 loop remaining on our hook. Okay, so now we're going to do yarn over, pull through 2 loops, 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 and yarn over, pull through 2 loops. There's 2 loops left, so we just need to do yarn over, pull through these last 2 loops, and now we just have the 1 loop remaining on our hook. Okay, so now we have completed our return pass. So now we're ready to do another forward pass. So now we need to collect our loops again so that we can work another row. So now what you're going to do is, if you look at the work, let me just go ahead and remove this for a moment so I can show you this closer. So if you look at the stitches, you can see these vertical bars right here. We are going to work our stitches around those vertical bars. We're actually going to be inserting our hook underneath those vertical bars just like this. So if you've ever done like front post double crochets, you would insert your hook underneath the post of the double crochet. So that is going to look a lot like that, the way we're going to insert it. So if you've done front post double crochets, this will look familiar to you when we work around the vertical bars. Okay, I'm going to put my hook back in here. Okay, so we're ready to begin our forward pass. So we're not going to insert our hook into this very first vertical bar. This loop here, that counts as our first stitch, which is in line with that vertical bar. So we do not work into that first one. We work into the second one. So we want to insert our hook underneath that vertical bar, just like that. Insert it just like that. And then we're going to do a yarn over, and we're going to pull that yarn over underneath that vertical bar and pull up a loop, and then we're going to leave the loop on the hook, because for the forward pass we're going to collect our loops. Okay, so now we're going to insert our hook underneath the next vertical bar. So you want to find your next vertical bar, which is right here. Insert your hook underneath it, yarn over, and we're going to pull that yarn over underneath that vertical bar, pull up a loop, and we're going to leave the loop on the hook because we're collecting our loops now. When we do a forward pass, when we work from right to left, we collect our loops. Okay, so then here's the next vertical bar. We're going to insert our hook underneath it, just like that, yarn over, pull that loop through, and leave the loop on the hook because we want to collect our loops now. Here's the next vertical bar. We're going to insert our hook underneath it, yarn over, pull up a loop, and leave the loop on the hook, just like that. And then find the next vertical bar, insert our hook underneath it, yarn over, pull that yarn over underneath the vertical bar, and leave your loop on the hook because we want to collect our loops whenever we do a forward pass. And then when we work from left to right, we are doing a return pass where we work the stitches, where we work the loops off the hook. So let's go ahead and finish our forward pass, collecting our loops. Here's the next vertical bar. We're going to insert a hook underneath it, yarn over, pull that yarn over underneath that vertical bar, and leave your loop on your hook. And then find your next one. It's right here, the next vertical bar. Insert a hook underneath, yarn over. We're going to pull the yarn over underneath that vertical bar, and then find our next vertical bar, yarn over, pull that yarn over underneath that vertical bar, and leave our loop on the hook. Now we have one more vertical bar here, and we're going to do something a little bit different. So when we work our rows with Tunisian Simple Stitch, we work the last row a little bit differently than the rest of the vertical bars. So you would think that you would just insert your hook underneath that vertical bar just like that, but we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we need to insert our hook underneath that vertical bar, and then get that strand right behind it. So you can churn your work and you can see that second strand. You want to insert your hook underneath the vertical bar and that second strand of yarn, because you want to have both loops on your hook like that. And then yarn over, and we're going to pull that through both strands just like this and leave the loop on the hook. And that completes our forward pass. So we want to make sure we started off with 10 chains, so we should have 10 loops for every row. So remember, we started off with 10 chains, so whenever we do a forward pass, we want to make sure that we have 10 loops. Perfect, I have 10 loops, and that's what we should have. So this is a good way to check before you move on to do the return pass, is to make sure you in fact have your 10 loops. To make sure you have the same amount of loops as you did when you did your chains. So you should have the same amount of loops as you did chains when you started. Okay, so now we're going to do another return pass. So now we're going to do a yarn over, and when we begin our row to do a return pass, we always go just through one loop to begin, and that is your chain up. And then we're going to do yarn over and pull through 2 loops at a time for the rest of the return pass. So I did yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2 loops at a time, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, and we're going to pull through the last 2 loops, and we have 1 loop on our hook now, and we have completed our return pass. Okay, so now we're ready to do another forward pass where we collect our loops. Remember, this first loop, that counts as a stitch, and that's in line with this first vertical bar. So we never work into the first vertical bar. We insert a hook underneath the next one. So not the one that's in line with this loop, that's the first one. We're not going to insert our hook into that one. We're going to find the next vertical bar, which is right here. So insert a hook underneath it, yarn over, pull that yarn over underneath that vertical bar to pull up a loop, and leave the loop on the hook. Because we're doing a forward pass, so we're collecting our loops now. Here's the next vertical bar. We insert a hook underneath it. We're going to do yarn over. We're going to pull that yarn over underneath that vertical bar and leave our loop on the hook. And we're going to do that the entire way down. But remember, when we get to that last vertical bar, we work that one a little bit differently than we do the rest of the vertical bars, because we want to make sure that we churn it to get underneath both the vertical bar and that second strand of yarn. So we want to remember when we get there to do that one a little bit differently. So let's go ahead and work the rest of the loops, and when we get to this one, I'll show you that. Okay, so here's the next vertical bar. I'm going to insert my hook underneath it, yarn over. I'm going to pull the yarn over underneath that vertical bar. Okay, and then we want to find the next vertical bar. We're going to insert a hook underneath that vertical bar, yarn over, pull that yarn over underneath the vertical bar. And then we want to find the next vertical bar, yarn over, pull the yarn over underneath the vertical bar to pull up a loop and leave the loop on the hook. And then we're going to do that for the rest of the vertical bars until we get to the last one, and I'll show you how to do that one. It's a little bit different. So go ahead and insert your hook underneath the vertical bar, yarn over, find the next vertical bar, yarn over, pull that underneath the vertical bar to pull up a loop and leave the loop on the hook. Insert underneath the next vertical bar, yarn over, pull the yarn over underneath the vertical bar and pull up a loop. And now we just have the one vertical bar left. And remember, we worked that one just a little bit differently. So you want to churn it so you can see that strand that's next to the vertical bar. So we want to insert a hook underneath both strands, the vertical bar in that loop there. yarn over and pull the yarn over through both loops, just like that. And now we have completed our forward pass where we collected our loops, and now we're ready to do a return pass. Okay, so to begin our return pass, we want to do a yarn over, and we're going to pull through just one loop to begin, and that's our chain up. And then we're going to finish this row by yarning over and pulling through 2 loops at a time for the rest of the loops that are on the hook until we just have 1 loop remaining on our hook. So I'm yarning over and pulling through just 2 loops at a time. Okay, so now I have just the 1 loop on my hook. I have finished my return pass. So you can see with Tunisian crochet, in order to complete a row, you always need a forward pass and a return pass to complete the row. In this first row that we did, that's your foundation row. Pretty much any Tunisian stitch is going to start off the same way. It's going to have the same foundation row. So that's why it's so important to learn the Tunisian Simple Stitch first. When you start to learn how to do Tunisian crochet, that's why this stitch should be the first one that you learn. So now we're ready to do another forward pass because we need to collect our loops. So remember, we never work into that first vertical bar because this loop counts as a stitch, and that's in line with that first vertical bar. So we want to find the next vertical bar, insert our hook underneath that, yarn over, pull up a loop, and we're going to do the same thing until we reach the end, and we work that last one a little bit different than the rest of the vertical bars. So we just want to do the same thing to collect our loops. Insert underneath the vertical bars, pull up a loop, okay, we have 2 more vertical bars, so this one we work, insert the hook underneath it, yarn over, pull up a loop. Now that's the last one, so we want to turn it because we want to make sure that we get both strands. We want to make sure that we insert a hook underneath the vertical bar and that strand right behind it. So if you turn it, and you can see that edge looks like the V stitches. And that's why we want to insert our hook underneath the vertical bar and that strand behind it. That way we have this nice edge with the V stitches just like we have here. And then if you look at this edge, you have the V stitches. And when we cast off along the top, we'll also have the V stitches. So it'll look really nice because the edges will all have a nice finished look. That's why we need to insert a hook underneath both. Okay, yarn over and then pull that through both strands to pull up a loop and leave the loop on our hook. So now we have completed our forward pass where we collected our loops, working from right to left. And remember, when we work from right to left to collect our loops, that's the forward pass. And whenever we work from left to right to work the loops off, that's our return pass. So now, remember, we started off with 10 chains, so we should have 10 loops. So that's always a good idea to check to make sure we have our 10 loops before we continue on to do a return pass. And I have 10 loops, so that's good. So now let's go ahead and do another return pass. Yarn over, and remember, when we start the return pass, we always pull through just 1 loop to begin, and that's our chain up. And then we do a yarn over and work through 2 loops at a time until we work all the stitches off the hook and have 1 loop remaining. So I'm going to go ahead and yarn over and pull through 2 loops at a time. Okay, so I just finished my return pass. So you can see, in order to complete a row, you need a forward pass and a return pass. So now, let's go ahead and cast off. Okay, so now we're going to learn how to cast off. So when you have finished your project and it's as big as you want it to be, then we need to cast off. So to do that, we are not going to insert our hook into this first vertical bar. We're going to find the next vertical bar, insert our hook underneath it, yarn over, pull that yarn over underneath and pull up a loop. And then what you're going to do is you're going to pull that loop through the loop that was already on the hook. Okay, and then you want to find your next vertical bar. We're going to insert the hook underneath the vertical bar, yarn over. We're going to pull the yarn over underneath that vertical bar. And then we're going to pull that loop right through the loop that's already on the hook to cast off. So you can see it's just like doing slip stitches like in regular crocheting. And then you want to find the next vertical bar, insert your hook underneath that one, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then that loop that we just pulled up, pull it through the loop that was already on the hook. And then find the next vertical bar, insert your hook underneath it, yarn over. We're going to pull the yarn over underneath that vertical bar, and then the loop we just pulled up, pull it through the loop that was already on the hook. And then find your next vertical bar, insert your hook underneath it, yarn over. And then we want to find the next vertical bar. We're going to insert a hook underneath the vertical bar, yarn over. We're going to pull the yarn over through and underneath that vertical bar to pull up a loop, and then pull that loop right through the loop that was already on the hook. And then find your next vertical bar, insert your hook underneath it, yarn over, pull the yarn over underneath that vertical bar to pull up a loop, and then we're going to pull that loop right through the loop that was already on the hook, just like that. So it seems like this part seems familiar to like knitting, because when you knit you have to cast off. So that's kind of like another similarity to knitting with Tunisian crochet. And then here's your next vertical bar, insert your hook underneath it, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then we're going to pull that loop through the loop that was already on the hook. And then find your next vertical bar, insert your hook underneath it, yarn over, pull that yarn over underneath that vertical bar to pull up a loop. And then we're going to pull that loop right through the loop that was already on the hook. Now we have just one more vertical bar. So we're going to do the same thing we did in the other rows when we worked the last one. We want to make sure that we turn it to insert our hook underneath both the vertical bar and that strand of yarn behind it, because we want to get both strands on our hook, just like that. Yarn over, pull through both loops to pull up a loop. Then we're going to pull that loop through the loop that was already on the hook. And that is how you do the cast off to complete your project. So that is how you do Tunisian crochet. And this is how you do the Tunisian Simple Stitch. So I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial today, where I showed you how to do Tunisian crochet and the Tunisian Simple Stitch. So I want to thank you for watching today, and I hope you have a great day.